Hello and welcome to Building the Premier Accounting Firm. This podcast is dedicated to helping you as the accounting professional to have the premier accounting firm in your area. It's here that we address various topics that range from marketing, selling, onboarding clients, retaining clients, being the leader that we need to be, and so much more. It's here each and every week we have guests on to address these various topics and in fact share with us the tips and tricks that we need in order to in fact become the leaders that we need to be, what we refer to as the accountrepreneur. Now, with that in mind, I am your host, Roger Knecht. I am the president of Universal Accounting Center, and for more than 20 years, I've been working with accounting professionals to help them, in fact, build their businesses, whether it's starting their companies or building their firms, training their staff, or working to actually offer new services. I've been able to actually make wonderful friendships and, more importantly, help them build the businesses of their dreams. And it's in that process that I've learned a number of things that I hope to share with you today and in other episodes, along with the guests that I have on the show. Now, our guest today is someone that I'm sure you're going to find very, very interesting, as I already do. It's Allison Williams. Allison is known as the law firm mentor. She is the owner of two successful companies. She is the founder of Williams Law Group, a full-service family law firm where she is a fellow of the American Academy of Matrimonial Lawyers, is certified by the New Jersey Supreme Court as a matrimonial law attorney, and is certified by the National Board of Trial Advocacy in family law. Now, after taking Williams Law Group from startup to a multi-million-dollar business in 3.5 years, she created a second business, Law Firm Mentor, where she provides business coaching services for solo and small law firm attorneys, helping them grow their revenue, crushing chaos in business, and making more money. And it's with that principle that we wanted to actually have her on the show today to share some of these business principles that she has found to be so applicable to the law firms and see how they actually apply to us as accounting professionals. So, Allison, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Roger. I can't wait for our conversation today.
This is going to be great. So one of the things that really appeals to me is becoming a lawyer. I know many lawyers. What drew you to that profession?
So that's an interesting question. Once upon a time, I would love to tell you that the answer to that question is that I wanted to help people. I wanted to leave my mark on the world. But honestly, I wanted to make money and I wanted to have power. And that was what drew me to the profession. And then once I got here, I actually started leaning into that and really found that I enjoyed some of the more genuine areas of being a business person. I got to help people. I got to be really one of the engineers of a practice area, my area being child abuse and neglect, parental representation. And it just fell into my lap as something that I could leave my mark on.
So when you're making these decisions to become a lawyer, what drew you from criminal to civil?
So I was never criminal.
Okay.
I've always been a family law attorney, and in family law, there is a subsection of people who are accused of child abuse and neglect, and that is a civil matter until it rises to the level of a criminal offense. Mm-hmm. But really what happened was someone walked into my office one day, and I was a younger attorney given the responsibility of whatever flowed downstream. And this woman landed in my office and needed help. And I remember trying to read everything and decipher everything. And there was really no one to help me that wasn't working through the public defender's office. And those cases are always gut-wrenching. And I found that the court system really did not concern itself with my client's needs as a person, with her story. We were kind of glossed over and brushed aside. It was almost a foregone conclusion that the state would get what it wanted. And I found that offensive and decided that would be my life's work to really fight that system.
One of the things that amazes me is I coincidentally happen to have a law firm that's a client of ours, and they do family law, as you're mentioning. They also deal with immigration and so forth. But the thing that struck me that's interesting is that in the law firm, the outside perception is a lot of the work is done preparing for and in the courtroom. And what amazed me was how much of the work actually takes place outside of the courtroom through mediation and so forth. And just enlighten the listeners as to what really makes up your law firm as you're doing the family law that you do.
So I own the law firm, and at this point, I am not actively servicing clients. I manage and mentor the attorneys. But when I was actively managing cases, typically most of the boots on the grounds work was the preparatory work, and that did include the clients in family law because they're strategizing what their life is going to look like after the dissolution of their marriage, or after they obtain a restraining order, or after they have a support obligation for a child. So there's a lot of working directly with the clients, but a lot of it is out of court work. So it is drafting documents, strategizing, planning ahead, gathering information, laying out a
Yeah.
structure for what the case will look like. And then the execution of that in court is probably about 15 to 20% of the actual time spent as an attorney.
Yeah, I actually personally found that quite interesting when we were starting to work together. Now, as for the questions of the day-to-day, you had, with your success as a law firm, this opportunity to then begin a second business where you were offering business consulting services. Obviously, I'm kind of interested. You got into that consultative space. You started to give back. What drew you to start the business? Why that approach?
So when I started off as a law firm owner, it was a traumatic experience, to say the least. I was working about 60 hours a week as a practicing attorney, and then I became a business owner. And it didn't occur to me to cut back on my client load. And so I had 60 hours a week of lawyering, plus now all the responsibility for marketing, for managing, for hiring, for supervising, for organizing, delegating. And it was so overwhelming that I knew I needed something, but I didn't know what that was. And so my instinctual answer was simply to work harder. And I worked 60 hours and then 70 hours and then 80 hours. And I kind of capped out at 90 hours a week, where I would get up in the morning, be a lawyer all day, be a secretary before court, after court, and nights and weekends. And it was just exhausting. And then at some point, I actually fell asleep driving home. I was driving about 90 miles an hour at the time. 90 is kind of the number of the day. And I almost hit a guardrail. And that was the wake up moment that I needed to realize that, my idea of working harder was just not going to work. So I actually worked with several business coaches over a relatively short period of time, took what was my instinctual talent for systematizing, organizing, and getting a lot of work done, and putting that into the framework of some of the mindset principles that I was taught, as well as some of the strategic moves that were required. And then I was very quickly and very easily able to grow myself from, again, a startup into a multi-million-dollar law firm, realizing how using systems to do that made life easier and made the process of growing a business much more effective. And so I started to share that information after I left being a coaching client, and just started to share that information online, and people started following me. And next thing I knew, I really had the pillars of a business. I just wasn't charging anyone. So I decided to actually go into business doing that work, and assembled a team relatively quickly, and we were off and running.
I love it. That moment you spoke of with the guardrail, I think a lot of the listeners will actually relate to that, because I think we're all in those situations where work hard, very common. I'm a workaholic, and I find very naturally that one of the things I'm drawn to doing is just working more. And it's fun. I enjoy work, so it's not an issue. But there are those times that you just have this realization of things aren't as they should be. And it does cause us to actually change. What were some of the principles or things that you basically learned from those business coaches at the time that you can share with us today as to how to pivot and actually step outside of the business and begin working on it?
Yeah, so there are a lot of challenges that come with being a business owner, and for most people, it is really that their immediate instinct is to do more of the work that is the bread and butter of the business. So whether it's an accountant who does more accounting work, a lawyer who does more legal work, a dentist who does more dentistry, there's always the stuff that drew you into a profession that you are naturally good at, and we all desire to be doing the things that we're good at and the things that we enjoy. And so you have to first suppress the urge to do more of the actual practice that you are building a business around, and focus on, as quickly as possible, getting other people into a system of doing your work at a high quality, and being able to monetize that while you are organizing, systematizing, marketing your business. And for most people, that's the fear point where it breaks down. They can't let go of the idea that they are the superior delivery of service, that that they are somehow doing something wrong to their prospects if they don't give themselves up as the delivery provider, but instead hand it over to someone else. The lack of trust that we typically have, that we have to overcome in allowing other people to do work on our behalf. And then ultimately recognizing that if you monetize the role appropriately before you hire, then every time you add a person, you should be adding both revenue and profit. But most people don't see that. They just either add a body to get some immediate relief from the stress of work, or they add extra work to do without marketing and thinking about how they're going to pay the person, and then they get into financial difficulties.
What you just shared there is huge. It's very important because, one, systems really resonated with me, and that's something I'd like to talk about. But I also liked how you coupled with the growth, the fact that, yes, as you're growing with more clients and hiring these people, that it needs to also be in tandem with the profits increasing as well. I think that's a good component that we need to keep as a benchmark of, is this growth worthwhile? Because so often with growth, there are those stresses that come in where the expenses of the new payroll, expenses of some other things may eat up any of that additional profit in the short term. And we've got to make sure that it's a priority to see it appear again at the bottom line, just because that's why that's one of the big reasons why we're doing all of this. So let's talk about systems for a quick moment. What advice do you have regarding systems?
So systems are my favorite topic. People know me for crushing chaos in business, and I always tell people that's really about creating a system for everything. So what I always suggest for any business owner that is looking to create a better way in business is the first thing you have to recognize is that you have to not only create systems, but you have to create systems for everything in your business. That means every job ought to have a level of automaticity that will enable you to step away from the job, knowing that there is a chronic way of doing things, your standard operating procedure, and knowing that someone in the business other than you could perform that role in the way that you would like if you give them the instructions in writing. So I tell people, start where your friction is, right? So if you're experiencing money distress, you have to look to the root of where that problem is, but then ultimately systematize that first so you can start to alleviate some of the stress that prevents you from getting to the systems in other areas of the business. And once you have that, then you can start to look more holistically at, where am I going to make the most profit? Where am I going to develop the most time? And then contemporaneously be approaching your systems from the perspective of more money and more time in everything that you do. You should always be creating more, not less, when you are creating systems.
Good. And with these systems, I know that in a lot of people's minds, they may not think of employee manuals. How do employee manuals tie into systems?
So I absolutely hate it when someone says to me, oh, I have a manual that I give out to my staff or my potential new hires when they start. Because what tends to happen is we write the manual, we set it and forget it, and then we hand it over to people, and people don't read manuals. I mean, if we as a society were the type that would actually read instructions that are provided to us, we wouldn't have lawsuits. We wouldn't have injuries happen. So many times it's because people are not reading the instructions. So the way that I like to teach our clients here at Law Firm Mentor, and certainly I think this is applicable to any industry, is that you have to create a culture around systems, right? The manual should be a living, breathing document as a starting point, but you should revisit it very often, and you should always be looking for ways to better your best in the way that you're doing things, so that every person in your business, whether they are the first year file clerk or a seasoned professional that you're hiring into the professional ranks of your business, no matter who they are, they see it as their job, a critical job function, that they are systematizing the work that they do. If a system exists, they are following it with precision. If a system does not exist, they are creating one. If a system is not working to their liking in some way, there's a process for changing the system so that everyone's on the same page. And then we're all rowing in the same direction, as opposed to what happens with an employee manual is you might skim it, you might look for an answer here or there, but you're not going to rely on it. You're certainly not going to use it.
I liked how we're having this conversation about employee manuals and systems at the same time, because we do have an employee manual. When somebody is a new hire, they read through it, and it's the traditional and the expected, I assume, legal things that you would anticipate, such as the harassment policy, possibly addressing things as personal time off. It's dealing with bereavement time, just a variety of things that just basically set in order. Here's what everybody's conforming to, and this is what we're all agreeing to as a work environment. But an integral part of the employee manual and an extension of it are these systems, the job descriptions. It's how we do the work. And I liked how you described those three elements. We're either building a manual, we're either following the manual, or we're improving the manual. And those systems, if we're committed to following them exactly as they're defined, it's those systems that become so valuable to the company, because if and when an employee is either promoted or chooses to leave or unfortunately is unable to work, we have in place the processes to follow to ensure that the work is done in a similar way. And the more similar, the more the client is appreciative of the work received. And so all of a sudden, what you're describing for me is exactly what every accounting firm needs to be striving to achieve, simply because of the fact that we're so systemic in the work that we're doing for our clients on a month-to-month basis. So this is a great conversation. So here's another part of this. As we're systemizing, how can a small business maybe build in, say, their marketing plan so that they have consistent recurring revenue? I mean, how does a system apply to marketing beyond just client retention and servicing them?
Yeah, so marketing is one of those critical functions that a lot of professionals that go into business for themselves overlook, because we are at the core, we're selling ourselves, right? And so we don't think that we need to have a plan around it. We think we just need to continue to do whatever it is that we've done so far to get business. But the beautiful thing about creating a marketing plan is that it allows you to be free of your business, so that revenue and profit are still coming into your business and expanding without you having to be the epicenter. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't work in your business. It just means that you shouldn't have to, in order to have a business that fluidly can run without you and allow you the lifestyle freedom as well as the income freedom that says, if I need to be the strategist, the CEO, and I'm not providing the service, my company is still going to be well, my employees will be well, and I will be well. So in order to do that, you really have to think about the different ways that clients come in through your business. Your customers come in through some source. Those we like to refer to as your marketing funnels. And then your marketing funnels really should have metrics and KPIs associated with each one of them. So how many impressions, how many eyes on your marketing message need to happen in order to get to your client load? How many of those impressions actually contain leads? And how many of those leads are viable? So every person that wants your business that could be a lead is not someone you necessarily want to sell to. Do you want to sell to someone who is far away from where you are, or is in an industry that you might not normally work with? You have to consider those things. And then once you have your number of viable leads, it really is a question of the second part of the marketing funnel, which is the sales process. What is it going to take to get them to call your office or communicate in some fashion, or for you to be able to reach out to them? How many of those people that actually call are going to be scheduled for appointments? How many of those appointments will actually show up? And then how many of those people convert to paying clients? And you need to know those numbers: the impressions, leads, viable leads, scheduled appointments, show up for appointment, and new clients for every type of marketing activity that you have. And therein comprises the starting point of your plan. Once you have that, you can determine things like how much is it appropriate to invest financially and how much time should I invest in each of my marketing funnels. And then you can start to delegate out portions of that plan and eventually all of the plan so that money is coming in consistently and on a recurring basis without you.
You've said some things that are music to my ears. When it comes to marketing, I like how you're describing it as being systematized. As one of the things we emphasize is what we refer to as the rule of thumb, and it's identifying 4 proven marketing methods that are bringing business into the company. And these 4 methods are complemented by a 5th, the thumb, which is to say you're always testing or exploring new revenue-producing strategies. And so one of the things that you identified very well with marketing is that it is the path through which we identify potential customers. And then once identified and they're in our CRM, We're then going to move them into a sales process to move them towards actually becoming an active paying customer and engagement. And in that process, the thing that's so appealing to accounting professionals is obviously the numbers, the KPIs. We shouldn't just be haphazardly doing things for the sake of being busy marketing and selling our services. We should be tracking along the way what's effectively providing a return on investment. If we put time or money into an effort, is it actually giving us the clients we deserve? What is our cost per acquisition of a client? And what is the lifetime value of a client to say how much are we willing to spend to acquire that client? And all of these numbers are what's fun and sexy in our world as to really what's happening in the business. And the one thing I would add to what you shared is once we've, through the marketing, identified the potential customers, the sales process can be very short or very long. It depends on each individual potential client. But the point is it's in that space that we're doing things to help position ourselves as the expert, the solution to their need, helping educate them as to why what we have to offer matters to them. And it's through that education that they'll ultimately want to meet with us, hear about our services, see what we can offer, and ultimately agree to pay us for the services we provide. And so it's in that narrative that you correctly tied in those numbers, those metrics to define all these key performance indicators. And all of a sudden, we've got now a system that from marketing to selling and then into fulfillment, like we were describing earlier, helps us to systematize the entire process so that we now have a viable business that's worth something in our absence because we have this manual, this process, this system that can be done by most anyone. So I'm really enjoying this. Let me ask now, what are the top 3 components you've identified to making a successful hire in a business then to implement these systems that we've created?
So hiring is always one of those challenges that I think anyone that has ever owned a business will say that they've encountered. It is the universal albatross around our neck.
It is.
Yeah, right. Especially now, because we keep hearing about the Great Resignation, and there's a whole lot of shifting in the marketplace in terms of how people want to work and whether they work in a brick and mortar business or virtually. But hiring is one of those challenges that if you dial in 3 things, you can really get traction on getting the right person. So those 3 things are attitude, aptitude, and fit. So, of course, for aptitude, that's where most professionals are going to go first, right? What are the basic things that you need to be able to do, and at what level of dexterity or sophistication are you going to be required to do them, such that we can say you're competent as an accountant or you're competent as an attorney or whomever, right? But the things that are often overlooked are the attitude and the cultural fit. So by attitude, I'm not really talking about somebody has a positive attitude or a negative attitude. That's a very small part of it, but we're really talking about what is their attitude toward work. So I'll give you an example of what I mean by that, because a lot of people get this one wrong just by definition. So once upon a time, when I was being hired as an attorney, I was asked the question that I was posed an example, really. If I was working on a team project and I had taken on the lion's share of the responsibility for the activity, even though it was supposed to be equally dispersed among the group, when we ultimately prevail, we get a great result. We as a team prevail in whatever our objective is, and the partners in the law firm are asked the question or pose the question to us, who was responsible for this effort? Would I say, hey, raise my hand, I'm the one that was primarily responsible because XYZ? Or would I equally share the load with my team, prioritizing that everyone feel included and that they see it as a group effort? And I said, I would prioritize myself. And I gave my reasons why. And then ultimately, I did not get a job offer. So I remember I ran into the attorney who interviewed me the second go round from that law firm. And I asked the question, I said, I thought things were going so great. I was really surprised, frankly, when I didn't get a job offer. And he said to me, we would love to hire you when you're at the partner level, right? We know that you're going to be successful. We can already tell from your answers. We know you're going to get to a certain place. When you're at that place and we're looking to bring in a shareholder, you'd be great. But we're looking to fill the ranks of the people who are boots on the ground doing the day-to-day associate legal work. And that requires that you are primarily a team player. The primary individual is the person who creates the big book of business, who is the person that has their name in lights. We need those in our firm, but we don't need those right now. And that was a quintessential example of my not having the right attitude. It wasn't that I had a bad attitude. I had an attitude that was consistent with a certain type of employee, which is not the role that they were looking to fill for what I was interviewing for. Now, kind of as a corollary to that, cultural fit is also really important. And cultural fit is really about how you want your business to function. There are some places that are very, very conservative, very traditional. Everyone's in a suit, everyone's buttoned down, everyone's working as an individual, working hard and reaping the economic fruits, but quality of life is not really that big of a deal. And then there are other companies that are very casual, even though they do very high quality work for their clients. They are business casual in attire. They work collectively in teams. They laugh, they joke, they play, and they're friends with their clients. And that's a different atmosphere. And that doesn't mean that that is a lower quality of atmosphere than the more traditionally buttoned up atmosphere. But the personality of the person that you're hiring is going to fit in one of those two places, rarely in both. So you have to be thinking about how the person chooses to work and what does their work style say about how they will be fulfilled and how you will be experiencing them in work. That's the attitude. And then you have to also consider what you are creating in terms of an environment, and that is the cultural fit. And if you neglect those two, no matter how capable a person is in the aptitude criteria, they're not going to be the best hire for you.
You know, I love these three things that you've identified. And similarly, we have a similar type discussion. We have what we refer to as our STAR training program, where we deal with building cultures of accountability. And we, in that process, speak of tools, training, and temperament. And like your attitude, temperament is that same thing. But real quickly, what you shared about aptitude, I couldn't agree more. When you're looking at the right hire, you're definitely looking at skills and experience. Do they have the training and the abilities to do the job? When you talk about attitude, it is so much more than that positive, negative. There's something to be said for people who see what they do as a job, where they do nothing more than is asked. They're there for the paycheck and nothing more. And then you have people that are willing to get involved and engaged and help, as you were describing much earlier, the system, develop and improve that system, the processes that are in the company. They're definitely engaged in what they do, and they have a passion for what it is they're doing. They like it, and they like the mission of the company. But your fit, I think, is also so appropriate. The fit is simply to say there is a culture, and whether you recognize it or not, there are certain things that can be a detractor from someone excelling in their position. Coincidentally, we had an employee that does very well here, but one of the challenges they faced is they, as a side profession, if you will, have always been involved with youth athletics as a coach, and was very big on team. And every time we would speak with them, they were always trying to bring in this team element into our culture. But our culture, long before he ever arrived, was very autonomous. We don't micromanage. We're very autonomous in the things that we do and independent in the sense that very much of what someone does not impact another person's work. And therefore, it was hard to create a team environment for this particular individual when so little of what anyone else was doing was impacting their success or failure. It was entirely based on them. So we had to take and in those conversations, put it into an athletic narrative, a sport narrative. And he finally realized what he's playing is a tennis game. We do all play together. We train together. We practice together. But at the end of the day, it's his performance on the tennis court that matters, whether or not he performs well, and it's his game to beat. And so he really resonated with that analogy, but it was something that was very telling of our fit, our culture, and what we have. So I like how you've explained all of this, because whether you're a small business or a large business, there is a culture in your company. So this is a great conversation. Let me change it now to niching. I know that as a lawyer, you obviously were offering or are offering business coaching to law firms, But niching always comes up in these types of discussions of how to grow the business and be successful as a business leader. Do you have any input or thought on the concept of niching?
Yeah, so I love the topic of niching because I think a lot of lawyers intellectually understand that. I think our industry as well as society, I mean, it's not just law, it's not just lawyers, it's really a lot of businesses recognize the need to have certain specializations, right? Nobody wants the jack of all trades anymore.
Yep.
They are really looking for something very targeted. But when you start talking about it, I think what happens for a lot of professionals is that they become very fearful of putting themselves in too small of a niche and not having enough business. So I want to illustrate how I really stumbled upon this idea and saw the success that came with it very, very easily. So as I mentioned earlier, I grew a law firm from $0 into a multi-million-dollar law firm in 3.5 years. And people ask me, how was that possible? Well, my practice area is representing parents accused of child abuse. And in the state of New Jersey and across the country, these stats are really generally found in just about every state. 98% of the people who were brought to court by the state of some allegation of child maltreatment were represented by the public defender's office. It really is thought of as a poverty practice. And so the one case that I had with the person that came to my office and I was just assigned to work with her, her parents had some money and they were helping her. I fell in love with the fight for that work. I loved helping the client. I loved fighting the issues. It was sophisticated in a very administrative way. My mind loved the details. And I wanted to do more with it. And when I spoke to people, they said to me, it's a poverty practice. You have so much potential. You have these credentials you're building in matrimonial law. You really should stay in matrimonial law. You can make more money there. And something about that felt wrong. And I can't really tell you that I intellectualized it at the time. I really just said, well, let me see, right? Let me figure it out. So I researched my market and I found out that only 2% of people in these areas, in these cases, are not represented by the state in the public defender arena. So I said, okay, well, that's 2%. That's 2% of some number, right? Tens of thousands of people every year. I can't represent them all. I can represent enough of them. And so I niched down and I said, this is what I do, right? I represent people in these cases and I put it out there. And I was terrified when I did this, right? I was starting to really expand in my career and I thought this might derail it. But I played a hunch. And next thing you know, people started referring me these cases. And then I said, well, I have a niche, but I want more because I knew that I wanted to grow a business and I knew that I wanted to make more of myself than just the one small area that I service. So at first I represent people involved in court. Then I started advertising that I represent people before they take you to court, right, to help you through the investigation. Then if you have an adverse finding in the investigation, but they don't take you to court, you have a right to an administrative appeal. I'll handle those too. And then if you have the issues of child abuse and maltreatment, and they come up in the course of your divorce or your domestic violence matter or your estate planning matter or wherever, I can help you with those issues there as well. And so next thing you know, by starting super, super small, I was able to brand myself as an expert of an issue. And then every place that issue comes up, my name is now associated with it. So very easily, hundreds of thousands of dollars could be created simply by virtue of adding a person because there would always be more than enough work because I had created my marketplace. And that's really what I teach the lawyers that we work with here at Law Firm Mentor when it's time to talk about niching. Like, don't just pick something because it sounds like a smaller version of what you really want to do. You really have to understand the market that you want to be in. Don't allow the limitations of what your perceived value is, what people think the economic value of your service will be is, because I always handle those cases at my hourly rate. My current hourly rate is $600 an hour. I charge people $600 an hour when I am choosing to represent them or help them in some way with child maltreatment issues. So, don't buy into the story around your practice area. And then step in the direction of what works and start to find ways to create around it, right? So brand yourself as the expert, even if you don't call yourself the expert, because a lot of ethics rules don't allow that in law. But brand yourself as the person with the specialized expertise in that area, and then filter it into other areas. And that allows you to expand around you being the star of a very, very, very small environment. Rather than you being the big fish in the ocean, you are the big fish in the teeny pond.
I think a lot of what you've just shared does cross over very well to the accounting profession. There is a little bit of fear moving into a niched space to presume, well, how much am I leaving on the table? What am I missing out on? What am I limiting myself to? And really, that's just kind of the opposite of what it should be perceived as. It's just like you were mentioning, it gives you a chance to really apply your passion in a very specific area and excel in that space. And it's not necessarily that you want to be unaware of how large that market space is. I mean, there is that 2% in your case of that greater whole. But at the same time, if you're doing your job well, you can charge well for your services, and it doesn't take much to be successful. And if you really truly enjoy it because it's related to maybe hobbies or interests that you have, it's just combining the two things, the things you enjoy and like doing the most with the people you have some interest in. And all of a sudden you're offering quality services to a need that really does exist, and you're excelling in that space. So, Allison, this has been a great conversation. I'm going to change gears on us, and I've just got some real quick questions that I wanted to ask because I've enjoyed our conversation, but I want to take it to a personal level. My father was raised in Great Neck, so I'm familiar with the area. Been to New Jersey quite a bit. I'll be there in September for a conference, in fact, so quite often in that area of the woods. Tell me, what is something I ought to do if I'm in that area that would be fun and different? What's something that I should put on my to-do list, my bucket list?
Oh, gosh. Well, if you're coming to New Jersey, the one thing that I absolutely love here is called the Grounds for Sculpture. And it's located right outside of Princeton area. But it's a beautiful environment where it is actually miles and miles and miles of these huge sculptures that are built out of stone. And you walk through this beatific garden. And then, of course, there are some museums there as well where you can see art exhibits. But it's perfectly laid out and just really eclectic. And one famous restaurant that's there is called the Rats Restaurant. And I wouldn't have thought that I would enjoy eating at a place called Rats, but I did. So it's actually Zagat rated, just wonderful, great restaurant. So you can have a lot of fun if you go there.
Well, that doesn't bring to mind any good images, especially with the rats in the area. But I will take your advice and I will put it on my to-do list. And I look forward to seeing what I can eat there that's enjoyable. The statues sound amazing. I'm actually one that's a sucker for a museum. I'm the one that takes hours to go through because I read or try to read at least all the little narratives that are there with each of the exhibits. But the family and friends, when I typically go with, at some point give up on me and either leave me behind or prod me along. But the point is I can put that on my bucket list, and I appreciate it. Here's another thing. As a lawyer, a very successful lawyer, what's something that people often misunderstand or don't immediately notice about you that you think is a true characteristic of who you actually are?
Man, so I've worked very hard on being my authentic self, and coaching really helped me to step into that more. But I would say that most people don't know about me that I am an introvert. And I get that a lot. When I say that, I kind of get the sneers. Some people laugh outright. Some people actually, kind of look at me like I have two heads. But I tell them, introvert versus extrovert is about energy. And when I'm around too many people, even if I love the people, right? If I just, I love my clients. I love the team that I've assembled in both of my companies. But sometimes I just people out. And, if I people out, that means I really have to go somewhere and be alone to recharge. And so I tell people that in advance so that they don't think that if I'm disengaging, that it has anything to do with them. But when I say that, I get a lot of blank stares.
I like that. I can actually identify with it. I would consider myself in a number of ways an introvert as well. I am very comfortable with my alone time, and I am recharged when I have a chance to read a book or watch a movie or do an activity by myself. It's not uncomfortable, and it's very fulfilling to me. where I don't have to worry about someone else. So I can identify with that. Thank you. The next question is what do you define as freedom?
Well, this one's pretty simple. I define freedom as being able to make as much money as you want, working as much or as little as you want.
Very good. How about gratitude? What are you grateful for?
I'm grateful for my life. And I know that that's kind of a generic statement, but once upon a time, I went through a very, very dark depression. I also am a recovering alcoholic. I hit 10 years in January.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. And I didn't value life until probably the last 8 to 10 years. And I've worked very, very hard on waking up every day, no matter the challenge, no matter the person, no matter the struggle, to make the decision to be grateful for all of it so that I could learn from it and use it for my greater good and for the greater good of the people I encounter.
You know, having heard you say that, I would imagine that when you spoke earlier of being authentic and true to yourself, it's something to finally accept and embrace your authentic you, who you are. And I'm imagining that somewhere in that journey, you had that moment where you came to peace and actually liked who you are.
Yeah, we got there. We were kicking and screaming on the pathway, but we definitely got there.
Darn it, I like myself. There you go. All right. Well, Allison, this has been a great conversation. I appreciate you sharing with us these insights. I feel that they were very much applicable to the accounting profession, and I've got a number of takeaways from it. So here's what I'd like to do. I'm going to kind of summarize our conversation here. The first thing that I just want to point out, though, is, as she mentioned, she does host her own podcast, and I'd like to invite you to listen to it. It's called The Crushing Chaos with Law Firm Mentor. And if you would like to learn more of what she has to do, just check it out on your preferred platform, or you can go to the episode description. And in the episode description, you'll find there the link to actually go to and hear her show as well. It's there in the episode description that you'll also find a few things that will actually help you apply these principles of systems as we've discussed today. The first thing that I'd like to mention is that there is a book called In the Black. It's 9 Principles to Making Your Business Profitable. It is an ebook that you can actually use to apply in your business these 9 proven principles to ensure that your business is profitable, but then likewise take these same principles to your clients and help them actually see what they can do to work on their business to keep profit a priority and something that is deliberate in the organization. The other thing I'd like to point out is we also have, related to systems and automation, things that you can do as it applies to marketing and selling your services. You can go and learn what the universal CRM is for accounting firms and see what it is you can be doing to automate your online presence to ensure that you're generating the leads you need to acquire the clients you deserve. So check out the episode description and find out more about these and other related services. Now, as a summary of our conversation today, there were a few highlights that I really took to light. First of all, systems. We always talk about them, and I think this was an excellent addition to the fact that we need to be looking at ways to systemize the work that we do to ensure the quality of the work that we're doing is consistent, and at the same time that it's independent of individuals, because we've got it so clearly defined as to what's expected and how it's done. The other thing I'd point out regarding this discussion is I loved how she identified the 3 things that are needed in order to hire the right person: aptitude, their skills and abilities, their attitude, and the fit. That was a great addition to this because I know that so many of us are struggling to find the right individuals to build our organizations. And so consider that as you're actually working on your business. And then we obviously got a few insights, one of which is an addition to my bucket list of going in New Jersey there to see the statues. And if anything, eat at Rats. So there you go. This was a fun discussion. So one of the things that I'd like to do for the listeners is obviously encourage you to like and subscribe to this podcast. If you haven't already, check out the other episodes that we have had with other experts to ensure that you're actually getting the tips and tricks that you need to work on your business. In addition to that, there are additional free resources that you can find in the episode description that I encourage you to take advantage of. And then lastly, if you'd like more information about these principles and other things that you can do in your business to have the premier accounting firm, go to universalaccountingschool.com or give us a phone call. You can reach us at 801-265-3777. And always remember this: if it's about accounting, it is universal. Take care and have a great day.